once upon a time in Astrea after one stranger. Young master, is there not something you ought to say to me? Stopped like that at the entrance of the manor, Heinkel Astrea felt a chill run down his spine. First, there was the fact that he had been surprised because he had not sensed her presence. However, that was something everyone else in the household besides him could do, and it had been startling him since long ago, so as a reason it was weak. So the main reason lay in the other thing, the guilt he was feeling. Heinkel, well, that is, stranger, please stop giving such halting answers. Conduct yourself with confidence. Heinkel, he swore no, my bad. He faltered, but his stalling for time with an obvious excuse was seen through at once. Before Heinkel could even turn around, a blonde woman with perfectly straight posture had stepped around to face him head-on. The woman with the long, narrow eyes who had aged with such grace was someone Heinkel had known since the day he was born. And in other words, for 20 years now their balance of power had not changed. She was one half of the married pair of servants who served House Astrea, and she was also Heinkel's wet nurse. Stranger. Under that wet nurse's sharp gaze, Heinkel felt as though she could see straight through his heart. In fact, not once up to now had he ever succeeded in hiding anything from her. Part of it was that Heinkel had no talent for keeping secrets, but above all it was due to the keenness of his nurse's eye. So this time as well, Heinkel promptly gave up and took a paper bag from his breast. The contents of that paper bag were exactly what he felt guilty about. Carol. Valnow tea leaves. It is the brand young master likes, but why are you going so far as to sneak it out in secret? Are you dissatisfied with the way I brew it? Heinkel. Of course not. I got to like tea because your tea is good, Carol. I was thinking of giving this to somebody. Carol, to somebody. Do not tell me you are trying to show charity to someone again. You should have learned your lesson when the beggars in the slums stripped you of every coin last time. Heinkel, don't bring up something from that long ago. Besides, Luana's not like that. Carol. Luana, that is a woman's name, is it not? At his nurse, who was quick not to overlook his slip of the tongue, Heinkel let out an awe and realized his mistake. However, that one word after his slip of the tongue was not good either. As if to say that she needed no further verbal confirmation, his nurse lifted her slender shoulders in a shrug. And Carol, I more or less understand the circumstances. If the reason you were trying to sneak tea leaves out behind my back has to do with a woman, then it makes sense. Heinkel, well, yeah, that's true, but... Carol, only please remember, young master, you are the firstborn of House Astrea, the heir to this home, with some light-hearted feeling. Heinkel, it's not light-hearted. Carol, haltingly, his nurse had begun a lecture meant to make him more self-aware, and just as she was about to continue her last words, Heinkel hastily spoke over her and cut her off. Catching the faint way his nurse's blue eyes widened, Heinkel let out a breath and Heinkel, it's not light-hearted. It's not like that. Really. As he spoke, without realizing it, Heinkel touched his right hand, his upper arm wrapped in bandages, and thought of the woman who had been the cause of that wound and was seared so deeply into his heart. What his nurse thought of that reply and the look on Heinkel's face afterward, he could not know. Only, after letting out a small sigh, she said, Carol, very well. It seems my words no longer reach you, young master. Heinkel, don't put it like that, Carol. I am joking. Do you not have an appointed time to keep? You had best hurry. After pretending to cry, then smiling as she said that, his nurse made even Heinkel, who checked the magic crystal timepiece, genuinely panic that he was running out of time. He stuffed the paper bag back into his breast and hurried to dash out, but before he did, he turned to his nurse. Heinkel, I'll introduce her properly next time, so watch over me for a while. Carol, yes. Please go and come back safely, young master. To the Heinkel who had said that, his nurse made a perfectly neat, beautiful bow. The fact that he had been praised for learning from that refined motion was, in a way, one facet of the relationship between who he was now and her, and somehow he felt proud of it. To Luana, Heinkel, over here, over here, over here. Since he had left the manor later than planned, Heinkel had been a little worried about whether he would make it in time, but that worry was easily shattered and scattered away by her lively, bright smile and wave. The commercial district in the royal capital, a flower shop set up in one corner of it. That was the place Heinkel jogged over to, and the workplace of Luana Hartley, who was waving at him. In front of the storefront, which carried with it a gentle waft of flowers' fragrance, Luana, who had already finished getting ready to go home, greeted the approaching Heinkel and ran over to him. Seeing her like that, Heinkel felt relieved, and a warm feeling welled up inside him as he said, "Heinkel, sorry to keep you waiting. I thought you might have already gone home." Luana: "Goodness, Heinkel, do you really think I am that impatient? If I know you are coming, there is no way I would go home." Heinkel: "But the whole picking you up and seeing you off thing is something I am doing on my own." Luana: "It is. It has completely become a habit." At Heinkel's awkward expression, Luana stuck out her lips in a sulky pout for a moment, only to immediately break into a grin and show him a smile just like a flower blooming. He was perfectly aware he was taking advantage of the fact that she never clearly refused. Heinkel had used the excuse that the lingering grudge of the remnants of the human trafficking organization and the possibility that their hatred might be turned on Luana meant someone had to escort her to and from her workplace and had volunteered for the job himself. Of course, that organization in question had already been dismantled by the Knights, and the main people involved had either been cut down or put in chains, so the odds of there being any remnants left who would threaten Luana were almost zero. Even so, the reason Heinkel wanted to guard Luana was not because he was extremely overprotective. That was not it. In the end, Heinkel just wanted to spend even a little longer with Luana. Luana: "Heinkel, there is kind of a medic-y smell on you, is there not?" Heinkel: sharp nose, maybe, but you are right, look." Luana: "Oh, could this be Valnau tea leaves?" Sniff, sniff, Luana twitched her nose, and with her exceptional sense of smell noticed the gift he had brought. Since she had noticed, there was no reason to hide it, so Heinkel took the paper bag from his breast and handed it to her. Lightly opening the mouth of the bag, Luana drew the wholesome aroma of the tea leaves deep into her chest. Luana: "Ha, I cannot get enough of this. Why is it that when tea is delicious, even the scent of the leaves is delicious?" Heinkel, can you solve this mystery? Heinkel: I am gonna need some time." Luana: "Understood, I will look forward to your answer tomorrow." Just like that, she had arbitrarily made it into homework on pure momentum. However, since it seemed he was allowed to come see her again tomorrow, Heinkel made up his mind to show up tomorrow with an answer that would make her happy. While he was forming that resolve, Luana, beside him, pursed her lips and said, "But, Luana, even if we promised, these are high-grade tea leaves, so just taking them and not giving anything in return feels wrong. So, in exchange, I would like to give you a flower, Heinkel." Heinkel: That is a quick conclusion. What about my opinion that you do not have to thank me or give me anything back?" Luana: "I am all ears for that opinion, not. Now then, which flower would suit you, Heinkel?" As if to say that her overflowing desire to reciprocate simply would not stop, Luana leaned in to peer into the flower shop. Heinkel stared wide-eyed for a while, then soon let the tension slip from his shoulders. He had never disliked flowers to begin with. As he had told Luana, Heinkel's mother had loved flowers, and the manor's garden had been filled to overflowing with seasonal blossoms. Because of that, for Heinkel, flowers were always something close at hand in his daily life. And among them, the ones Heinkel felt a particular attachment to were Heinkel and Luana. "Diana flowers." That was what Heinkel said at the exact same moment Luana said it. Heinkel involuntarily held his breath, and Luana, with a puzzled look on her face, blinked her eyes a few times, then gently gathered up some of the Diana, the yellow flowers at the storefront, into a bouquet. Luana: Hee, that was pretty in sync just now. Mega, was it not? Heinkel: Yeah, I was mega surprised. Is this really for me? Luana: It is. Please think of it as a small token from me. Ah, if you like, I can also make you a flower crown. I am sure it would look good on you. Heinkel: Sorry, but I will pass on that. He appreciated the enthusiasm, but at his age he wanted to avoid wearing a flower crown if he could help it. If Luana actually gave him one, there would probably be no way for him to refuse to put it on. So the best move Heinkel could make was to avoid that outcome before it happened. Fortunately, Luana did not suddenly pull out a "I have already made one" flower crown and offer it to him, so he felt relieved. At any rate, Luana, we have safely traded tea leaves for a bouquet, so shall we get going? Heinkel: Yeah, I do not really want weird rumors starting up at your workplace. Luana, weird rumors? For example, what kind? Heinkel, like that there was some big guy with a yellow flower crown on his head. Luana, that did not even happen. Ah, I understand. Please look forward to tomorrow. Heinkel, I do not think you understand, so wait a second. Thinking that he had said something unnecessary, Heinkel scrambled to use every word he could to explain himself to Luana, who was suddenly fired up. What he had wanted to say was that he did not want to cause trouble for Luana, and that with some man picking her up and dropping her off every day, people might resent her for it. Those were the kinds of worries he had. But Luana, since everyone has it that you are my fiancé, Heinkel, I do not think anyone is looking at it that way. Heinkel, Luana, on the contrary, because I get picked up and dropped off every day, my coworkers shower me with high-pitched cheers. Even I, before I know it, kind of end up walking around with my chest puffed out. Heinkel, your chest, huh, Luana? Exactly like him, you know. Luana put her hands on her hips and boasted. And from that, Heinkel was able to feel relieved that it did not seem like his offer had become a burden to her. As for the engagement she mentioned, that was nothing more than a verbal promise made between Heinkel and her, and even that had been another thing he had one-sidedly proposed, borrowing the power of that human trafficking organization's affair. Of course, Heinkel was serious, and he felt that Luana did not particularly dislike him either, but it was also true that she possessed a mysterious charm that made it easy to imagine her saying the next day, "Did I ever say something like that?" Because of that, Heinkel had not been able to carelessly dig deeper into that topic. And yet, Luana went and said things like this so easily. Heinkel, I am over here hesitating even to ask you out somewhere or something. The stated pretext was that he was her guard, and he had even equipped himself with the noble cause that their engagement was in order to protect Luana. So Heinkel had ended up binding himself hand and foot. He was taking her to and from work because it was dangerous. And if he then took her out for meals or to the theater, those actions would run headlong into that premise, and the thought made Heinkel clutch his head. Then, as he was struggling in that self-spun web, Luana peered at his profile and said, Luana, Heinkel, there is somewhere I would like to stop by on the way. Is that all right? Heinkel, a detour, I do not mind, but again. Luana, yes. Come on now, it is a different place from yesterday. At Luana's smiling suggestion, Heinkel nodded back with an all right. It had been several days now since he started picking her up and seeing her off like this, but Luana very often did not go straight home from work, instead wandering off here and there to make little detours. Of course, sometimes she would be picking up foodstuffs or daily necessities, but Luana's detours were not limited to those sorts of essentials. Luana. Look, Heinkel, it is a doggy family. Following the sharp point of Luana's finger to the edge of the street, he saw 3 dogs with fluffy white fur, 2 puppies clinging to their large mother and snuggling up to her. It was indeed an adorable sight, and he could understand why Luana's voice was so bright. Heinkel, Luana, that is what you wanted to detour for. Luana, it is. I heard from a customer today. They told me that right at the corner of 6th Street, there is a secret little spot for cuteness. They are Mekawa, are they not? Heinkel, they are Mekawa. Luana adored the dog family, calling them cute, and while he found Luana herself adorable, Heinkel echoed her and said as much. At that rate, Heinkel had a wild time, helping Luana feed the dogs, giving his thoughts on a plan to find them new homes, getting chased all over by the dogs that took a huge liking to him, and then, for some reason, having to soothe Luana when she sulked and called it unfair. After they said goodbye to the dogs like that and left them, the sun, which had still been quite high when they left the flower shop, had dipped, and as the presence of night drew close to the royal capital, Heinkel finally saw Luana safely home. Luana, all right, we are here. Thank you very much for today as well. Heinkel, yeah, right, that is true. Luana, what is wrong? Did you forget something? In front of the apartment building where Luana's room was, Heinkel gave a halting reply, and she tilted her head at him. Heinkel shook his head and said, No, that is not it. Heinkel, it is just, with how hectic things were today too, I feel like I did not really fulfill the main duty of escorting you. Luana, what are you saying? You properly escorted me all the way home like this, and you kept me thoroughly entertained with our detours along the way. playing with the doggies like that. I will reenact it all right. Heinkel, you do not have to. That would just be reenacting me getting chased around by the dogs, right? He did think he would like to see a reenactment of her playing with the dogs, but he tossed that hope aside. In any case, as far as Heinkel was concerned, he wanted to first carry out his guarding duties cleanly and properly, just as stated in name, and then connect that to his next hopes. Unfortunately for that, he was getting a failing grade today as well. Luana, if you are that dissatisfied, then let me see, could you give me that bouquet? Heinkel, this. But you are the one who gave this to me, Luana. Are you sure, Luana? Yes, please, with all your might. It was not the sort of thing one needed to get fired up about, so Heinkel was a bit bewildered. But even so, the bouquet that he had been given by no one other than her at the flower shop, he went down on one knee and gently offered to her. Luana softly received that bouquet in both hands and hugged it to her chest. Luana, thank you very much. Heinkel, you are mech again today. Heinkel, yeah, if that is how it is, I am starting to feel like this was just fine then. Luana, it is. Well then, see you tomorrow. Would you like to come in? Heinkel, no, I did not bring the courage for that today, maybe next time. He thought it was a terribly cowardly answer, but Luana neither laughed nor looked disappointed. Instead, she smiled and said, understood, and saw him off, waving her hand big and wide. Seeing her wave him off like that and heading home, Heinkel found himself thinking once again. Next time for sure, he would invite Luana out somewhere himself. Of course, Heinkel had no idea, but these daily trips picking Luana up and seeing her home, and the little detours that came with them, were recognized by the people around them as intimate rendezvous time between an engaged couple. The only ones who did not know were the very people involved. No, to be precise, the only one who did not know was one half of the pairing. In addition, what awaited Heinkel when he returned home that day, full of resolve, was his wet nurse, and having heard the story from her, his biological mother, who both subjected him to a persistent round of questioning about how things were progressing with the one he had given the tea leaves to. Since he could only give flustered answers to that, he gravely disappointed both of his mothers, and that, too, should be added here. End.